the underwater Area 51, the real reason the Titanic was found, and a secret spy mission that was foiled due to a traitor in the NSA. Let's dive right in. Starting off, we are talking about Project Azorian. For this one, let's take it back to 1968, which was truly a time of worldwide unrest, and it was during the height of the Cold War, with the US and the Soviet Union doing everything they could to outpace and spy on the other. During this time, the Soviet submarines were causing a ton of fear within the United States. One of these armed submarines was known as K-129, armed with 21 ballistic missiles, 2 nuclear-tipped torpedoes, and of course, the latest in Soviet technology. The ship alone had the power to cause a ton of disaster, and it also could launch its weapons in deep water, which made it quite a formidable threat. Things took quite the turn, however, when in March of that year, K-129 went missing. The Soviets had never lost a submarine with nuclear weapons on board, so for them, this was the worst case scenario. At first, of course, the US didn't know the ship had gone missing, but suddenly American intelligence vessels began picking up some details of a huge Soviet recovery operation that was involving 40 vessels and 53 aircraft and was taking place about 1,000 miles northwest of Hawaii. For 2 months, the Soviets searched the area, but to no avail. Of course, this made the Americans very interested in finding and recovering this lost vessel, along with all of the important information, code books, etc. that might be on board. American intelligence, using cutting-edge underwater listening technology, pinpointed the sunken sub within the vast Pacific Ocean, but how to retrieve it from a depth greater than the Titanic's resting place. The CIA stepped in, partnering with a private company and eccentric millionaire Howard Hughes. Under the guise of an experimental deep-sea mining operation, a massive ship was constructed, the Hughes Glomar Explorer. A custom-built claw was secretly designed to snatch the sub from the ocean floor. 6 years later, after battling storms and Soviet surveillance, the mission reached its climax. The claw grasped the submarine and began its slow ascent, but unfortunately, disaster struck. The claw malfunctioned and most of the sub plunged back into the abyss, and although the mission was deemed a failure, it forced the Soviets to overhaul their submarine operations at great cost. Next, we're talking about Operation Ivy Bells. During the Cold War, the US pulled off a daring underwater espionage mission codenamed Operation Ivy Bells. Navy divers working from a modified submarine, the USS Halibut, secretly tapped into Soviet underwater communication lines in the Sea of Okhotsk. This was no easy feat, as the area was heavily guarded and off-limits to foreign vessels, but the potential intelligence goldmine was too tempting to resist. The divers successfully installed a recording device on the cable which captured unencrypted conversations between high-ranking Soviet officers. This provided invaluable intel on naval operations, including those of nuclear submarines. These recordings were retrieved and replaced monthly, with the data being analyzed by the NSA. The mission continued for years, with more taps installed on the Soviet lines worldwide. However, the operation was ultimately compromised by an NSA employee, Ronald Pelton. He actually sold the information to the KGB for money, of course. The Soviets eventually discovered and removed the tap in the sea, ending the chapter of Cold War espionage. The recording device is now on display in a Moscow museum, actually. Next, we are talking about the Titanic Secret. So, I didn't know this until literally today, but did you know that the discovery of the Titanic wreckage was actually part of a secret US military operation that was initially meant to be recovering 2 sunken nuclear submarines? So, if you know about the Titanic, you probably already know how Robert Ballard was hailed as a hero for discovering the long-lost ship in 1985. That was 73 years after its initial sinking. Based on some documents that became declassified just a few years ago, however, it became clear that Ballard was definitely not searching this area just completely on his own accord, discovered, and that his discovery came as he was a part of a US government scheme against the Soviet Union, of course. Ballard, who was an oceanographer and former Navy officer, was building an underwater research vessel in order to fulfill his lifelong dream of finding the Titanic wreckage, but of course, in order to do this, he needed funding. So he approached the Navy for help. That is when the Deputy Chief of Naval Operations, Ronald Thunman, came up with a plan. The Navy would help fund Ballard's project, but only if he promised to help them find the Thresher and the Scorpion. These were two US nuclear submarines that were sitting on the floor of the Atlantic Ocean that had sunk in the 1960s, and they were full of valuable information and military technology. The Navy didn't want the public to know that they were being searched for because they didn't want word to get back to the Soviet Union, so the Titanic search became the perfect cover story. With the media in the dark, Ballard's team embarked on a covert operation, successfully locating both submarines before turning their attention to the Titanic. They had just 12 days to find the famous wreck, and they did, etching their names in history while also honoring the solemn resting place of the 1,500 passengers who perished in the tragedy. This next operation was one deep-sea part of a larger Soviet mission in 1962 that aimed at deploying weapons and a division of mechanized infantry to Cuba to create an army group that would be able to prevent an invasion by United States forces. In a secret mission codenamed Operation Kama, the Soviets attempted to sneakily station 7 ballistic missile submarines in Cuba right under America's nose. It was like a high-stakes game of hide and seek, with the submarines trying to avoid detection as they crossed the Atlantic. However, the mission quickly unraveled as the American blockade of Cuba discovered and relentlessly pursued the Soviet submarines. Faced with malfunctioning equipment, sweltering conditions, and dwindling supplies, the submarines were forced to surface, marking a very dramatic end to this clandestine operation. Next, we're talking about Operation Barmaid. In a daring 1982 operation, the British nuclear submarine HMS Conqueror, fresh from a successful combat patrol in the Falkland Islands, embarked on a secret mission in the Barents Sea. Its target was a top-secret Soviet-towed sonar array, a very valuable piece of military technology for detecting underwater threats. Outfitted with cutting-edge tools like remote-controlled steel blades and TV cameras, the Conqueror approached the Polish-flagged intelligence vessel that was towing the sonar array. In a tense underwater maneuver, the submarine carefully cut the array loose, avoiding detection by the passive sonar and retrieving it with divers. That is one of the craziest stories I've ever heard. Could you imagine being a part of that? I don't think I would breathe the entire time. The stolen device was then flown to the US for analysis, providing valuable insight into Soviet naval capabilities. This very daring act of espionage is just another story that exemplifies the high-stakes undersea cat-and-mouse games played during the Cold War. Next, we're talking about Project SEAL. During World War II, the US and New Zealand militaries collaborated on a top-secret project codenamed Project SEAL, and this was aimed to explore the possibility of weaponizing tsunamis. This idea stemmed from a US Navy officer's observation that explosions used for clearing coral reefs often triggered waves. This sparked a series of covert experiments conducted off the coast of New Zealand and New Caledonia. Over 7 months, nearly 3,700 test explosions were carried out in these remote locations. While the tests confirmed that a single blast wouldn't create a devastating tsunami, researchers concluded that strategically placed explosives could potentially unleash a destructive wave upon enemy shores. Although promising and terrifying in theory, Project SEAL was thankfully never fully realized due to logistical challenges and the war's end. However, the project definitely remains a fascinating example of wartime innovation and the willingness to explore unconventional weaponry. I gotta say, a tsunami is definitely unconventional. That's just crazy. Next, we are talking about the Ghost Shark. Deep beneath the waves, a secretive mission is actually currently underway. The Royal Australian Navy, in collaboration with Anduril Industries, is developing the Ghost Shark, an autonomous underwater vehicle designed for stealth, long-range intelligence gathering, and potentially even strikes. This cutting-edge submarine, still shrouded in secrecy, represents a significant leap forward in naval technology. 3 prototypes have already been ordered, with the first Alpha being unveiled just recently in April of 2024, ahead of schedule and generating considerable buzz in defense circles. So while the Ghost Shark's exact capabilities and missions remain classified, its potential to revolutionize undersea warfare is definitely undeniable. As the project progresses, we can only imagine what this Phantom of the Depths will achieve in the years to come. Next, we're talking about Operation Earnest Will. Beneath the waves of the Persian Gulf, a secret war was waged. In 1987, the US Navy embarked on Operation Earnest Will, a very high-stakes mission to protect Kuwaiti oil tankers from Iranian attacks. This wasn't your average escort mission, it was the largest naval convoy operation since World War II. While US warships patrolled the surface, Navy SEALs, special boat units, and Night Stalker aviators joined forces in a covert operation known as Prime Chance. Their mission? To thwart Iranian mining and small boat attacks under the cover of darkness. They transformed oil service barges into mobile sea bases, playing a game with Iranian forces. The SEALs, armed with Mark III patrol boats, hunted Iranian ships laying mines. In a daring nighttime raid, they boarded and captured an Iranian vessel, uncovering a logbook detailing previous mining locations. This intelligence proved crucial in predicting Iranian movements and neutralizing their threat. Operation Earnest Will wasn't without its challenges, of course. The tanker Bridgeton struck an Iranian mine on the very first mission, but the US Navy persevered, deploying minesweepers and intensifying its presence in the region. In the end, Operation Earnest Will proved successful. Iranian attacks dwindled, and a ceasefire was eventually reached. This covert deep-sea mission played a pivotal role in protecting vital shipping lanes and maintaining stability in the Persian Gulf. Next, we are talking about ARD Bayview. This place is nestled in the depths of Idaho's Lake Pend Oriole. The US Navy operates a secretive submarine base with a deep-sea mission unlike any other. This underwater Area 51 is the home to the Acoustic Research Detachment, the ARD, where the Navy tests cutting-edge submarine and surface ship designs in a subscale environment that perfectly mimics the ocean. The lake's depth, vastness, and tranquil conditions make it an ideal testing ground. Since World War II, the Navy has been drawn to its deep, quiet waters to develop their most advanced underwater technologies. It's a watery version of the famous Area 51, where top secret innovations take shape. The ARD is where the Navy has perfected submarine designs and acoustic dampening techniques for over 65 years. They even evaluate the noise levels of toilet pumps to ensure stealthy operation. But this hidden base isn't just about submarines. The Navy actually recently introduced a surface combatant capability to its testing repertoire, promising even faster innovation in naval technology. The ARD boasts a fleet of subscale vessels, including the LSV-2 Cutthroat, the world's largest unmanned submarine. These autonomous submarines prowl through the depths, testing new hull forms, propellers, and propulsion concepts. And finally on our list today, we are talking about Operation Dominic. In 1962, amidst the escalating Cold War tensions, the United States launched Operation Dominic, a deep-sea mission involving a series of 31 nuclear test explosions in the Pacific. This ambitious undertaking was a direct response to the Soviet Union's resumption of nuclear testing, aiming to demonstrate American strength and technological prowess. The majority of the tests involved dropping free-fall bombs from B-52 bombers, while others utilized Thor missiles to lift warheads into near space, creating a mesmerizing spectacle of high-altitude explosions known as Operation Fishbowl. Operation Dominic was, of course, shrouded in secrecy, and it was a pivotal moment in history, marking the United States' largest ever nuclear weapons testing program and its last atmospheric test series before the signing of the Limited Test Ban Treaty. Alright guys, that has been our list for today. Thanks so much for checking it out. I've been your host today, Olivia Kozlovsky, and I'll see you again soon. Goodbye. The tanker Bridgerton, not Bridgerton,